My in-laws convinced my husband to secretly DNA test our children behind my back as a precaution, and when the test showed our daughter wasn't his, he immediately filed for divorce before confronting me, only to discover later that the lab had mixed up the results, and now he's desperate to win me back after I found out he never even considered there might be a mistake. 6 months ago, I had what I considered a happy marriage of 12 years with 2 beautiful children, Lily, 8, and Noah, 5. My husband James and I met in college, dated for 3 years, and built what I thought was a rock-solid relationship based on trust, communication, and shared values. We weren't perfect, but we were happy, or so I believed. That life shattered in an instant when James came home one evening, face pale and eyes cold, handed me divorce papers, and told me he knew the truth about Lily. Confused and panicking, I asked him what he was talking about. His response felt like a physical blow. "I know she's not mine. The DNA test proves it." I was completely blindsided. DNA test? When had he tested our daughter? And more importantly, how could he possibly think I had been unfaithful? In our 12 years together, I had never given him any reason to doubt my fidelity. I had never cheated, not once, not ever. Through my shock and tears, the story emerged. His parents, particularly his mother Barbara, had never fully accepted me into the family. From the beginning, she found subtle ways to undermine our relationship, commenting on how James and I had different values, suggesting I wasn't good enough for her son, questioning my parenting decisions. I knew she didn't approve of me, but I thought we had reached a civil understanding over the years for the sake of the children and family harmony. What I didn't know was that Barbara had been planting seeds of doubt in James's mind for years. According to him, she had pointed out that Lily had features that didn't match either of our families. Her hair was a different shade of blonde than anyone else's. Her eyes were a unique hazel color. She was tall for her age while both our families tended toward average height. All these normal genetic variations that could easily be explained by the complex nature of heredity had been twisted by his mother into evidence that something wasn't right. For years, James had dismissed his mother's insinuations. But 3 weeks before he handed me those divorce papers, during a visit to his parents' home without me, I had stayed behind to care for Noah who had a cold. Barbara had finally worn him down. She had prepared a presentation, yes, an actual PowerPoint with photos and evidence laying out her case for why Lily couldn't possibly be his biological child. And she had come prepared with a home DNA testing kit. In a moment of weakness, doubt, and family pressure, James had agreed to swab Lily's cheek while she slept the night they returned from the visit. He sent the sample in along with his own, never saying a word to me about his suspicions or the test. When the results came back indicating he was not Lily's biological father, he didn't confront me. He didn't ask for an explanation. Instead, he went straight to a lawyer, filed for divorce, and only then presented me with what he considered irrefutable evidence of my betrayal. I was devastated. Through tears and screams, I swore my innocence. I reminded him that I had never given him reason to doubt me, that I had been a faithful wife for our entire relationship. I begged him to consider other explanations, a lab error, a mix-up of samples, anything other than the infidelity I knew had never occurred. But his mind was made up. The DNA test was scientific proof, he said. He had already told his family, who were supporting him through this difficult time. He had even begun telling some of our closest friends that I had betrayed him in the worst possible way. He wanted full custody of Noah, his real child, and was generously offering me primary custody of Lily, the child he now rejected as not his own. I was not only losing my husband but watching him try to tear apart our family, attempting to separate siblings who adored each other based on a test I was certain had to be wrong. In desperation, I contacted the DNA testing company. After days of being bounced between customer service representatives, I finally reached a supervisor willing to look into the issue. I insisted that there must have been a mistake, that another test would prove James was indeed Lily's father. The supervisor promised to investigate but warned that errors were extremely rare. Meanwhile, James had moved out and was staying with his parents. He limited his contact with me to terse messages about logistics and finances. When he came to see Noah, he barely acknowledged Lily, the daughter he had doted on for 8 years, the little girl who couldn't understand why her daddy suddenly didn't want to play with her or tuck her in at night. Watching Lily's confusion and hurt turn to sadness was the most painful part of this nightmare. She would ask me, "Did I do something bad? Is that why Daddy doesn't love me anymore?" Each question was a knife to my heart. 2 agonizing weeks passed before I received a call from the DNA testing company. The supervisor informed me that after a thorough investigation, they had discovered a significant error. When processing multiple samples on the same day, 2 had been mislabeled. James's sample had been confused with another customer's, leading to the false result that he was not Lily's father. The company was deeply apologetic, offering a full refund and free additional testing to confirm the correct result. They explained that while their error rate was indeed very low, mistakes did occasionally happen, which is why they usually recommended professional testing for legal matters. I immediately called James, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I relayed what the company had told me, expecting relief, apologies, perhaps even joy that our family could be restored. His reaction shocked me almost as much as the initial accusation. Instead of apologizing, he was skeptical. He questioned whether I had somehow manipulated the company into changing their results. He wanted to do another test, this time through a more reliable company his mother had researched. I agreed to the second test, not because I felt I needed to prove anything more, but because I wanted our family back, and this seemed the only path forward. The new test was conducted by a judicial-grade laboratory, with samples collected under supervision to ensure no tampering. 1 week later, the results confirmed what I had known all along: James was, without a doubt, Lily's biological father. Only then did James's demeanor begin to change. The coldness melted into confusion, then horror as the reality of what he had done began to sink in. He had doubted his wife of 12 years. He had filed for divorce without a conversation. He had rejected his daughter and told friends and family that I was unfaithful, all based on a flawed test and his mother's poisonous suspicions. He came to me in tears, begging forgiveness, talking about how we could move past this and rebuild our family. He spoke about making it up to Lily, about cutting ties with his mother if necessary, about couples therapy and a fresh start. But something had broken inside me. Yes, the test had been wrong, but James's response to it had revealed a truth far more damaging than any DNA result. When faced with a choice between trusting me and believing the worst, he had chosen the latter without hesitation. He had been willing to destroy our marriage, traumatize our children, and ruin my reputation without even giving me the benefit of a conversation. I asked him one question: why didn't you just talk to me first? His answer was revealing in its inadequacy. He said he had been so hurt, so angry, that he couldn't bear to hear what he assumed would be lies from me. He admitted that his mother had convinced him I would manipulate him if given the chance, that I would find a way to explain away the evidence if confronted. That's when I realized the true extent of the problem. It wasn't just about a faulty DNA test. It was about James allowing his mother to insert herself into our marriage for years, about his willingness to believe the worst of me despite our history, about his complete disregard for the impact of his actions on our children, particularly Lily. I told James the first needed time and space to think. He moved into a nearby apartment, while I consulted with a therapist and a lawyer to understand my options. The pain Lily had experienced couldn't be easily undone. She knew her father had rejected her, even if she didn't understand why, and his sudden desire to reconnect confused her further. 3 months had passed since that conversation. James has been working hard to repair his relationship with Lily, spending quality time with her and Noah, attending family therapy sessions, and maintaining respectful boundaries with his parents, who he now only sees without the children present. As for our marriage, I'm still uncertain. The trust that was broken cannot be easily repaired. The fact that he could believe me capable of such deception, that he could throw away our family without even a conversation, has fundamentally changed how I see him and our relationship. Can you truly rebuild after such a profound breach of trust? I don't have the answer yet. Some days I remember the good years and think perhaps, with time and consistent effort, we might find our way back to each other. Other days, I'm overwhelmed by the memory of his cold eyes as he handed me those divorce papers, and I wonder if that moment revealed the true nature of our relationship all along. For now, I'm focused on healing myself and helping our children navigate this confusing time. I'm taking it one day at a time, trying to make decisions based on what will bring long-term happiness and stability rather than short-term relief from the pain. I'm sharing this story as a caution about how quickly suspicion, family interference, and blind trust in scientific evidence without context can destroy something precious. I hope no one else has to learn this lesson the way my family has. Update: 3 months later. It's been 3 months since my last post, and I wanted to provide an update on our situation. So much has changed, and yet in many ways, we're still navigating the aftermath of what happened. First, regarding James and me, after many long conversations, therapy sessions, both individual and couples, and careful consideration, we've decided to give our marriage another chance. This wasn't a decision I made lightly. For weeks, I wavered between wanting to preserve our family unit and fearing that the trust between us had been irreparably broken. What ultimately swayed me was James's consistent, patient effort to make amends, not just with words, but with actions. He's been completely transparent about everything, giving me access to his communications, making himself accountable for his whereabouts, and most importantly, demonstrating through daily choices that he now prioritizes our family above his parents' influence. The most significant development came about 2 months ago when James finally confronted his mother directly about her role in nearly destroying our family. After weeks of avoiding the difficult conversation, he arranged to meet her without his father present, who, we've come to realize, has been a largely passive participant in Barbara's schemes. According to James, the conversation was painful but necessary. He told Barbara in no uncertain terms that her manipulative behavior and unfounded accusations had nearly cost him his marriage and irreparably harmed his daughter. He made it clear that while he wasn't cutting her out of his life entirely, their relationship would be fundamentally different moving forward. Barbara's reaction was predictably defensive. She insisted she had only been looking out for her son's interests, that she had legitimate concerns about Lily's paternity. Even when faced with irrefutable evidence that she had been wrong, she couldn't bring herself to admit the damage her actions had caused. The conversation ended with James establishing firm boundaries. Barbara would not be welcome in our home or around our children unless she acknowledged the harm she had caused and made a genuine apology to me and, most importantly, to Lily. So far, that apology hasn't come, and consequently, she hasn't seen her grandchildren in nearly 3 months. This has created tension with James's father, who feels caught in the middle, but James has remained firm. For the first time in our marriage, he's truly putting our nuclear family's well-being above his parents' demands and manipulation. This shift has been essential to our reconciliation process. As for our children, we've been working with a child psychologist to help Lily process what happened. We've been honest with her in age-appropriate ways, explaining that Daddy made a mistake because he was confused by a wrong test result, but that he loves her very much and always will. We've emphasized that families sometimes go through hard times but can come out stronger when they work together and tell the truth. Lily's relationship with James is slowly healing. There are still moments when she's hesitant with him, when the pain of rejection resurfaces, but these instances are becoming less frequent. James has been extremely attentive and patient, never pushing her to forgive him but consistently showing up for her regardless. Noah, being younger, has adapted more quickly to our reconciliation, though he still occasionally asks if Daddy is going to leave again, a question that breaks both our hearts. Our social circle has largely been supportive, though we've discovered who our true friends are through this ordeal. Those who were quick to believe the worst about me based on James's initial accusations have been gently distanced from our lives. Those who reserved judgment or offered support regardless of what they believed have become even closer to us. Perhaps the most unexpected development has been my relationship with James's father, Richard. About a month ago, he reached out to me privately, expressing deep remorse for not standing up to Barbara's behavior over the years. He admitted that he had often recognized her manipulative tactics but had found it easier to go along with her than to challenge her. This conversation led to a separate relationship between Richard and our family, where he visits the children without Barbara, usually meeting us at parks or restaurants. He's making a genuine effort to be a positive presence in Lily and Noah's lives without bringing the toxic dynamics of his marriage into the equation. James and I are still in therapy, both individually and as a couple. The breach of trust caused by his actions isn't something that can be healed overnight. There are still days when I look at him and feel a wave of hurt and anger wash over me, remembering how quickly he had been willing to believe the worst about me and discard our family. But there are also days, increasingly frequent ones, when I see the man I fell in love with, the father who adores his children, the partner who is now doing the difficult work of examining his own weaknesses and blind spots. In those moments, I believe our marriage might not only survive but eventually become stronger for having weathered this storm. We've learned painful but valuable lessons about communication, trust, boundaries with extended family, and the fragility of even seemingly solid relationships. We've both committed to never again making major decisions without discussing them together, regardless of how convincing the evidence might seem. For anyone going through a similar situation, whether it's dealing with intrusive in-laws, facing accusations of infidelity, or trying to rebuild trust after a betrayal, the only advice I can offer is to take your time with major decisions. Emotions are powerful but temporary. The choices we make while in their grip can have permanent consequences. Update: 1 year later. It's been exactly 1 year since that terrible day when James handed me divorce papers, and I wanted to provide a final update on where things stand with our family now. The past year has been one of intense healing, difficult conversations, and slow, careful rebuilding. James and I are still together, still working on our marriage, still committed to creating a healthy environment for our children. But the journey has been far from linear, with setbacks and breakthroughs occurring in unexpected ways. 6 months ago, we hit a significant rough patch in our reconciliation. The initial shock and relief had worn off, and we found ourselves dealing with the deeper, more insidious effects of what had happened. Trust issues surfaced in everyday interactions. I would feel a surge of anxiety if James was late coming home from work. He would become defensive if I questioned him about anything, even innocuous matters. Our therapist explained that this was normal, that recovering from betrayal, even when based on a misunderstanding, follows a pattern similar to grief, with unpredictable cycles of anger, bargaining, and acceptance. She helped us develop tools to communicate through these difficult moments, to recognize triggers, and to distinguish between reasonable caution and unhealthy suspicion. One surprising revelation came during a particularly intense therapy session when James admitted that his willingness to believe his mother's accusations stemmed from his own deep-seated insecurities. Throughout our marriage, he had harbored a vague sense that he wasn't quite good enough for me, a feeling his mother had subtly reinforced over the years. When presented with evidence of infidelity, it had confirmed a fear he didn't even realize he carried, that I would eventually find someone better. This breakthrough helped us address not just the immediate trauma of the DNA test incident but the underlying dynamics that had made our marriage vulnerable to outside interference in the first place. James has been working through these insecurities in his individual therapy, while I've been examining my own tendency to avoid conflict, which had prevented me from directly addressing his mother's inappropriate behavior years earlier. As for Barbara, our relationship remains complicated and distant. After 6 months of standoff, she finally offered what could generously be called an apology, though it was filled with qualifiers. "I'm sorry if you felt hurt," rather than "I'm sorry for what I did." She has been permitted limited, supervised contact with the children, always in public places and with James present. These visits are civil but strained, and I doubt we will ever fully repair our relationship. Richard, on the other hand, has become a more positive presence in our lives. Once separated from Barbara's influence, he's shown himself to be a caring grandfather who genuinely wants to make amends for his passive role in the damage caused. He and Lily have developed a special bond over their shared interest in gardening, spending weekends working on a vegetable patch in our backyard. There are still moments when the pain resurfaces unexpectedly. Last month, I discovered the original divorce papers while cleaning out our home office. Seeing them again, the cold, clinical language dissolving our family, the checkbox indicating adultery as grounds, sent me into a tailspin that took days to recover from. James was patient and understanding, giving me space when I needed it and reassurance when I was ready to receive it. We've made practical changes as well. We moved to a new house in a different neighborhood, wanting a fresh start away from the memories associated with our old home. We've established new traditions and routines as a family, creating positive experiences to help balance the difficult ones. We've even discussed having another child, though we're not quite ready for that step yet. Perhaps the most significant change has been in how we approach our relationship with extended family. We now have explicit conversations about boundaries, expectations, and appropriate involvement. James no longer allows his parents, particularly his mother, to make comments about our marriage or parenting decisions. When she has attempted to overstep, he has calmly but firmly shut it down, sometimes ending visits early if necessary. This past month marked a milestone. We attended family therapy with the children for the last time. Their therapist believes they've processed the trauma as well as can be expected and that continuing our regular family activities without the label of therapy would be more beneficial moving forward. We still have monthly check-ins scheduled, but this graduation felt significant, a professional acknowledgement that our family has healed enough to function without regular intervention. Looking back on this year, I'm struck by how something so devastating could ultimately lead to growth. James and I both agree that while we would never have chosen this painful path, we've emerged with a stronger, more authentic relationship than we had before. The illusions and unhealthy patterns that had silently undermined our marriage for years have been exposed and addressed. The boundaries that should have been established long ago are finally in place. I won't pretend everything is perfect. There are still nights when I lie awake wondering if I made the right choice in staying, still moments when a certain look or comment triggers the memory of betrayal. But these instances grow less frequent and less intense with time. What I've learned through this experience is that relationships are both more fragile and more resilient than we realize. They can be nearly destroyed by a single misunderstanding but can also withstand tremendous damage if both parties are committed to repair. Trust, once broken, can be rebuilt, but it creates a different structure than before, perhaps less naive, but often stronger and more intentionally maintained. For those who have followed our story and offered support, thank you. For those going through similar trials, I can only offer this: give yourself permission to feel the full spectrum of emotions, seek professional help, and make decisions based on patterns of behavior rather than promises or isolated incidents. Whether you choose to rebuild or to walk away, prioritize healing, your own and your children's, above all else. Our story doesn't have a perfect fairy tale ending, but it has something better, an authentic middle, filled with hard-won wisdom, deliberate choices, and the kind of love that perseveres not because it's easy, but because it's worth fighting for.